We begin the class. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. We continue from where we left. We just completed the chapter on pranayama, and today we begin the chapter on pratyahara. Swamiji has spent some time discussing on this very important topic. Pratyahara and dharana both have been combined into one chapter. And pratyahara begins only when we have finished the first four steps: yama, niyama, asana, and pranayama. So we come to pratyahara, then we have dharana, sixth, seventh is dhyana, and then samadhi. So the second half, which deals with the mind, pratyahara and dharana, will be the topic of our discussion. Now, what is pratyahara? Swamiji is trying to explain to us the exact meaning of pratyahara. Pratyahara, I have told you earlier also, what exactly it means is prati means against and ahara means food. So, anything that prevents you from taking food. Now, what is this food? Food is nothing but the perceptions that we receive as a result of our sight, smell, and other gyanendriyas, the organs which give us all the input, sensory input, the sense organs, the sight, the smell, the ears, the hearing. So, and of course, the karmendriyas like the mouth, we take food through the mouth also. But here, when you mean ahara, they are predominantly the gyanendriyas. Karmendriyas are there, no doubt. When you eat something, when you touch something, these are the other sense organs which are also involved, the taste. So they are also gyanendriyas, but the input which you get through any of these senses, one or all or many, it's not that ahara only means food. It of course means food, but food can be food for the senses. It doesn't just mean food that we consume through the mouth. So we have to understand, first of all, Swamiji says, how do these perceptions come to a person? How do we see? We don't even think about this particular phenomena of perception. We perceive many things right from childhood. The day we are born, we are hearing, thinking, we are hearing, we are seeing, we are feeling, we are tasting, we are doing all these things through our sense organs from day one. And a lot of information is being generated by our perceptions, consciously or unconsciously. These things you cannot avoid. The moment you start breathing, moment the child is born, these perceptions start coming. And you respond to them, you react to them, or you just watch them. There are many ways of reacting to these sense perceptions. But we never seem to do it consciously. We never think, oh, how do these perceptions come? Why do I see? Unless you are a biology student, unless you are a botany student or a zoology student, you don't try to understand this very phenomena of a layman doesn't bother. Only thing is he knows whether his sense organs are working perfectly. If he doesn't see properly, he'll go to a ophthalmologist and get some spectacles so he can see clearly. There may be some defect in the eyesight, there may be defect in the smell, there may be defect in the taste. So that is because of the lack of sensitivity of the organ. The person who perceives it as such has this capacity to see the input as it is presented to him by the sense organs. Now the sense organs, if they give for a blind person, for example, four sense organs are working, the eyes are not working. So he is getting input only through four sense organs. And all his perceptions, which he gets through the other four organs, Gyanendriyas, except the eye, he processes them. If somebody says it's a beautiful green background or a green color, now there's no way he can understand this perception. Similarly, Swamiji says, if we have a sixth sense, like if you have an organ which can detect radio waves or maybe some other waves, which some of the animals can do, ultrasonic waves, or maybe some vibrations which we do not catch, our ear does not catch. The owl or the bat, they seem to catch. They have some sense organs which are more sharper than ours. They can hear sounds which we cannot hear, which do not fall in the range of vibrations we normally perceive through the ear. So they have some superior sense. One or some of the organs may be superior in some animals. So also among human beings also, our sense perceptions differ. A color blind person may not see color. So though we perceive things, we have hardly thought how these perceptions occur. Unless we are scientists, unless we are specialists who are trying to find out how the light enters the retina, the eye, and it falls on the retina and creates an inverse image, and then you try to reverse it. The brain reverses it, the mirror image, and then we try to get a feeling of what image is formed on our retina. So that is how the perception takes place. But beyond that, we do not know. We just know the physical phenomena, how this information is carried to the brain, how much seconds, microseconds, or milliseconds it takes for the thing that we see go to the organ, the center of hearing or center of seeing in the brain, and how much time does it take to respond. All these things happen simultaneously, and we get a continuous feeling that we are watching or we are hearing. In fact, it is a series of vibrations, one following the other. They impinge upon our brain, and the resultant is what we really perceive. It is not the individual images are processed one after another. No doubt they are processed one after another, but they are so fast that they give us a feeling that we are continuously perceiving these things. The brain is continuously processing this information. Whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever you feel. So this pratyahara becomes very important, because that is one thing which we are doing every second of our life. Not a single second goes, unless we are, of course, in coma, that the sense organs are not conveying some information or the other. Even if we shut our eyes, even if we put earplugs, still some kind of perception is there. Your skin will, your touch, something is in contact with the world. So some perception is happening, unless you are totally unconscious or totally the brain is not functioning. The centers are totally stopped for some reason. Then perhaps you don't have this perception, but otherwise you have these perceptions. So now these perceptions, try to understand how these perceptions come. A rudimentary understanding is necessary, otherwise we cannot control it. Suppose you know how to drive a car. If you know all the mechanisms, if you know all the rules, then you can drive the car properly. And if you just can't ask somebody to just sit in a car and ask him to drive instantaneously, he can't do it, because he doesn't know how the processes take place. Where is the steering? Where is the brake? How does he accelerate? How does he start the car? So systematically, this training has to be given. In our case, of course, we don't need this training automatically when you are born, all these perceptions. But for learning yoga, to control, if you want to control the car, if you just want to sit in a car, then you don't have to learn driving. Somebody will drive and you will just be a witness or you will just be a passenger. But if you yourself want to drive the car, then you have to control the car. The driver controls the entire car, the motion of the car, where it will stop, where it will run, how fast it will go. So all these things, the input, whatever input the driver gets, he has to perform certain actions and control the car. So also our body is getting various inputs, and if we want to react, then we have to train our mind to react in a particular way. Then only the input is processed properly and used properly. Otherwise, if we make it automatic like animals, if there is a action or there is a perception and you respond without thinking instinctively, then there is hardly any difference between an animal and a man. The animal does exactly that. If it sees some danger, it runs. If it feels hungry, it eats. If it sees something, it goes after the prey. It knows exactly what is conducive, what is not conducive to its survival. So if survival was the only question, then we are perfect as far as pratyahara is concerned. We don't require any pratyahara at all. We just live like an animal. We can easily live and survive. That is what primitive man did. He competed with the animals in that space, in the livings, like in the animal space. Trees, of course, have their own life and their own perceptions, but they're slightly different. But if you see the animals, they more or less have the same, similar type of organs, not the same, and the similar responses as human beings. So a vast majority of human beings, uh, if they want to just survive as the animals do, then it is not a very big issue. It's not a big biological issue. They will do it. In fact, people who are living in some of the most remotest tribal areas, they also have some kind of instinctive life which enables them to survive the vagaries of nature. Nature may bring about a lot of changes which can threaten animals. So also these tribals also face these things, but they somehow, their instinct, their experience, their perceptions, their responses to those perceptions have taught them how to handle them when there is a danger, when there is some crisis. And they somehow manage to survive. But that is not the issue. Human beings have exercised more control over his perceptions, and that is what we mean by pratyahara. So the more you control your perceptions, before doing that, you have to first understand what these perceptions are and why should I control them. If I want to live like an animal, then I don't have to control this. You just allow the perceptions to come to you, and the brain reacts automatically for survival. And it has become automatic because that is the nature of a animal or a human being who lives like an animal, to somehow survive, to do all the things which a animal does to survive, like satisfying its hunger and so many other activities it does. But if you want to be, if you want to develop or evolve into a higher human being, then certain faculties which are active, like pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, these faculties open new vistas, new possibilities in a human being, precisely in a yogi. A yogi says, am I living just to eat, drink, and be merry? Then, with a rudimentary intelligence, a little bit of worldly wisdom, I can earn my money, or even without earning money, I can just depend on my survival instincts and somehow survive in this world. Many people many of the aborigines and the original people who live in the forest, they are somehow managing to live and live healthy lives, not that they die early. Though they are not so well equipped, so called well equipped, like a modern human being who uses science and technology for elongating or uh, for living a better life, so called better life. He succeeds to a certain extent using his intelligence. But how did that intelligence develop? That intelligence developed because of this pratyahara. He tried to control his thought processes. He tried to control the responses to the ahara or to the things which are coming in, the sensory input. He tried to process it. He tried to observe it. He tried to make laws, scientific laws. And that is how science progressed. Then he started thinking, why should I react if somebody comes to kill me? Why should I kill him back like an animal? Animal has a very simple stimulus response life. There is some stimulus and it responds and it finishes. It doesn't need to think. It just needs to think how it can catch the prey and survive. So the whole evolution up to the animal or up to a crude human level is depending on survival of the fittest, as Darwin said. But that is not the whole of evolution. Darwin forgot that it is not just the survival of the fittest, but when it comes to human being, you go a step ahead. You just don't evolve and say that I want to survive. You need something beyond physical survival. If somebody tells you, I'll give you food, I'll give you everything, you just sit in a room. All you want is to survive. I'll see that you survive. Will you sit quiet? No. We have other curiosities, we have other intellectual capacities which we have developed over centuries. Man has evolved spiritually also. So it wants to do higher and higher things. It wants to see, why am I a slave to my senses? Can I not control my senses and see if there is a higher life beyond this sense life? So this is exactly the idea of yoga. And this is exactly what we mean by pratyahara. There are, Swamiji says, when a yogi starts analyzing and thinks that God has given me a wonderful human body with wonderful sense organs. What am I supposed to do with this? It's like somebody gives you a very expensive car and then you don't know all the uh, possibilities. What does that car do? Maybe it has some wonderful attachments or wonderful controls. If you use them, you can drive that car in a much better way. There are so many wonderful things incorporated into the car. But since you just know driving, or maybe you know a rudimentary driving, you'll just use the accelerator and the brake and then just drive the car. You will not use many of its features. So also the human body was not given to us, especially when you start evolving, to have a good digestion, to have a good taste, or to have a good to enjoy yourself by seeing wonderful visions, which anyway we are doing, and enjoy nice smells, enjoy many things in nature that we are doing anyway, and it requires a kind of skill also, but it doesn't require the knowledge of how these perceptions come. You just enjoy. You just live a slightly sophisticated life than these animals because you enjoy better because of the use of science and technology which humankind has developed over centuries. You use of their gadgets. If you cannot see, if the animals cannot see beyond their visible range, but man has invented telescopes. He has invented wonderful devices. He has invented the computer. He can go on a virtual tour and see many things which physically may not be accessible. He can know what is going on in America now. So our knowledge horizons have expanded, and they have expanded to such an extent that we are able to do many, many, many more things at the physical level and also at the intellectual level, which the animals cannot do. We have left them far behind. So that is one way of looking at evolution. And perhaps, though they are not essential for survival, they have helped us survive. So in a way, Darwin is correct when he says the survival of the fittest. Because man invented farming, man invented so many techniques, the medical techniques, he can expect to live longer. He can expect to live longer, expect a better quality of life, even as an animal does. More than that, because he has used his intelligence and evolved. He has evolved physically, definitely. But there are other dimensions to the human being. When you develop physically, there are some people like poets and other people who develop intellectually, who write poetry, who write literature, which perhaps does not help them to enhance the sensory experience, but it enhances their mental experience. They live in a world where they would rather write a piece of poetry and get joy rather than go to the forest and enjoy the brooks and the trees and the wonderful. There are people who enjoy those things, but there are other people who sitting in the room feel equally joyful or experience a greater joy by creating something with their minds rather than enjoy the sensory. So they don't want to go on treks or they don't want to travel because they feel I can create, I have better use my mind in creating a wonderful piece of poetry. Or maybe somebody will paint, he'll paint a beautiful scenery rather than take a picture. Some people may be interested in photography, they'll take a picture and they'll take pictures in different angles. That is also an art, no doubt. But a painter feels what is the fun in it's a machine that is taking the picture. So it is not a great creative thing which one is doing. But let me paint that scene, the scene which I saw, which is there in my imagination. So the painters, the literary people, the poets, and all these efforts which human being has done is at an intellectual level, at the level of Vijnanamaya Kosha or the Manomaya Kosha. A refined Mano mind uses the perceptions he has and creates something which is of a more subtle and a higher nature, and he gets joy out of it. So, Pratyahara, if it is used for physical purposes, we are not very much better than animals. But if it is used for intellectual purposes, we are considered to be creative people, culturally higher people, higher in the hierarchy, culturally advanced, intellectually advanced. And we say that we have evolved. We have evolved from being a human being who is just physical to a human being who is more intellectual than physical. No doubt he enjoys the physical things, but also at the same time, he feels more joy when he enjoys things intellectually. So that is how the development takes place in this pratyahara and the response to that pratyahara. So the better the pratyahara, the better the observation, the better the control of the sense organs, he gets more spare time for intellectual pursuits. Otherwise, he'll be bombarded day and night by the sensory input and he gets so much information. That's what is happening when we say a person has got ADHD, some psychological problems, where attention deficiency is noticed in certain people. And there is some kind of hyperactivity because he has, unfortunately, he's attention deficient because he's hyperactive. And he's hyperactive because there is a lot of sensory input which is unprocessed and which his brain gets confused. He doesn't know what to do with so much of information. He wants to listen to music, he wants to do this, he wants to do that. He's hyperactive and he is not satisfied. If you see the people who normally suffer from ADHD, which is not actually a psychological issue or a problem, if you see, it's just a wrong training of the mind which can be rectified even without medicine. You don't have to take drugs to do that, though psychiatrists or psychologists may advise you to. But what it actually means is at some stage of our life, we are also attention deficient because of our hyperactivity. And hyperactivity is a result because of constant bombardment of ahara. There is no pratyahara, there is only input, and there is such a superabundance of input bombarding you that you don't. At this instant, you feel like enjoying some music. I mean, you're restless, you want to do something else, you want to see a movie, then you want to just go out, you want to eat something, you invite people, you want to socialize, you want to go to movies, you want to do so many things. And the children find that it is quite boring just to do one particular thing and not change. So, change, constant change, is what a man without pratyahara anticipates and expects. And such trained people or trained children, they will have this problem of attention deficiency. That is why we just give it a scientific name and call it as ADHD. And there are many other psychological disorders which can be traced to this lack of pratyahara. So even to live a normal life, a evolved life, leave alone a spiritual life, even to live that, we require some kind of capacity to pay attention to a particular thing to the exclusion of other things. For that, you have to block certain inputs. That is pratyahara. We have to see how the external instruments are bombarding our brain with so many inputs. Now people blame these mobiles and other things. They say if a child is exposed to this mobile or too much of social media day and night, there are so many new diseases coming to young kids and children because they do not know, before they have learned to control their minds, before they have been taught pratyahara, they have been fed with these gadgets. Not that their gadgets by themselves are harmful, not that social media or all these inputs are harmful. If they can be given good stuff, it can be useful as well, depending on how you use it. But if you are not able to teach the child, educate the child into this technique of pratyahara, then there is very little chance that he will evolve and develop higher faculties, because dharana comes next. Then comes dhyana or meditation. So we are still on the fifth step, and how essential it is, Swamiji is trying to describe. Without this pratyahara, one cannot even become a normal, happy human being, leave alone a yogi. So it's not just for yoga that pratyahara is necessary, not just for people who practice Patanjali's yoga, but for normal survival, normal peace of mind, for our normal problems like anxiety, worry, and other things. We need this pratyahara and to understand what this pratyahara is. So Swamiji now tries to tell us, just as we know how to drive, how to control the car before we can attempt to drive the car through London, through the busy streets of London, where you have to have a wonderful coordination and control. But that is only possible if you know the processes, if you know what to do at what stage, how to drive a car, how to get the inputs from the rear window, from the rear mirror, from the side mirror, from the front mirror, from the various signals. So if if we understand how our body, how our soul or our jiva is getting the impressions from the outside world, and how mechanical we are in interpreting and responding to these inputs, and how we are slaves of nature. We actually want to do some things, but nature forces us to do because we are at the mercy of nature. We have not yet learned the art of pratyahara. So that's why we find that there are many things which we would like to do. We would like to sit quiet. We would like to make somebody sit quietly. We want to make a restless child quiet. But unless we teach that child pratyahara, you can't expect the child to get rid of that attention deficiency. It may be the child may be extremely intelligent because the inputs, it can interpret the inputs also. Many people who are attention deficient may not be dull, they can be highly intelligent. But at the same time, they do not know what to do with their intelligence. They cannot process it. They give wonderful solutions. They have wonderful. They can be called as geniuses, but at the same time, they cannot put this wonderful intelligence and convert it into wisdom. There is a difference between wisdom and intelligence. We do many things intelligently, very skillfully, and we think we are very happy when the child does academically very well because we feel he's a highly intelligent person. No doubt, intelligence is required. But what does that child do with that intelligence? Is it wise enough? Has the child enough self control? Or we ourselves? In every aspect of our life, the intelligence or the level of skills we exhibit, are they being used to channel, are they being channelized towards a higher purpose, towards a creative purpose, which gives us happiness, peace, and joy? Now, that is a very vital question which can be answered only if we understand this pratyahara and the next steps, dharana, dhyana, and finally samadhi. Samadhi, of course, is the final step. And the total fulfillment or joy is experienced only when we reach samadhi. But let us forget that. We are yet to arrive at the stage where we can say that we are masters of pratyahara. If we have not crossed this fifth stage in Patanjali's 8 stages, then we can't expect to even meditate or go to the higher levels, which is dhyana, dharana, which is next to pratyahara, higher stage, which can be termed as concentration, not meditation. Then dhyana, which is meditation, not the Western concept of meditation, but Patanjali's concept of meditation. And then we have samadhi. So we are 4 steps away, you can say. The next step is pratyahara, as I told you, and I gave you a clear idea, try to give you a clear idea of what this pratyahara is, what it does to us, why is it necessary, and how it is to be. Now, how it is to be developed, this stage of pratyahara. We learned many things about pranayama, some things, not many things, because Swamiji gave us a few exercises on pranayama which were necessary for us and which are sufficient for us if we want to go higher. We can't just get stuck at any level, be it asana or pratyahara or even pranayama. He just says learn enough to proceed to the next higher step. That is what we are supposed to do. So Swamiji now says pratyahara, you have to first understand. You have to understand the car before driving it. You have to understand the mind, and before you can use that knowledge or use that wisdom to go higher. So Swamiji now says there are some steps which you should understand in this exercise of pratyahara which we are going to attempt now, knowing fully well that without that we cannot go further in yoga or even in bhoga. We even in the worldly sphere, to make any progress, to use our skills for a happy life, a happy normal life without any spirituality, even for that pratyahara is required. So there are the external instruments, the eyes which we use every day, every second, every moment without any rest. Continuously the information is coming in. The external instruments are there. We know. We keep it in good condition. At least we try to keep it in good condition. If there is some defect, we go to the doctor to correct our eyesight, to correct our hearing, and do so many things. Use gadgets to enhance our sensory experience. That's fine. The external instruments are there, either natural or artificial, like specs and other things, which help us to make full use of our eyes. But that is not all. There are internal organs acting in body through the brain. Now this is a matter of uh, some kind of interpretation, whether the brain centers are the main thing or the external organs. Of course, the brain centers are the main, because you may have the best pair of eyes, perfect eyes, but if there is some damage in the brain, you perhaps cannot see. So more importance is given to the brain centers in the brain, which according to some neuroscientists are localized, but according to some, there is a thing known as neuroplasticity of the brain. And scientists are now trying to understand that though the sensory experiences or the sense organs or the sense centers in the brain are localized, there is a particular place where in the cerebral cortex where which is responsible for sight. There are certain places which are responsible for hearing, and damage to these will result in damage to the sensory experiences. But now they have found that, strictly speaking, there are other areas of the brain also. The brain is plastic enough, neuroplasticity they call it, which enables the brain to take over functions even if certain portions are damaged. So by training, by mental training, one can expect to enhance these sensory inputs or enhance the capacity to interpret the sensory inputs. That is what the brain does. So the brain as an organ is very important for the functioning of the mind. That we accept. Even Western psychology or Indian psychology or yoga accepts that. That there are the external organs which are to be kept in good order. The eyes, the ears, the mouth, the nose, and all those things. And there are the centers in the brain which also have to be perfect to get a perfect sensory experience. It may vary from person to person, but it has to be more or less moderately functioning to be able to perceive things. Now, there is a thing known as mind separate from the brain, unique to yoga. The reason being that there are some instances, moments in everybody's life where you are seeing certain things, but your attention is not focused on that. You are having some very anxious moments. You are having some kind of depression. There may be wonderful things. If you see a depressed person who is having a depressed mind, you put him in the most exciting, you surround him with most exciting things. But his senses are registering all those things, but he is not interested. He says, I'm not in a good mood. You must have seen many times it happens to us. Every time it happens to us, we get an idea. You may have the most wonderful things. A party may be going on. During normal times, you would have enjoyed it. But when you are not in a mood, you are seeing things, but you don't feel like responding. Or even you may not be seeing these things, though you are physically seeing, the retina is seeing those things, but it is not registering. Your mind is somewhere else. Mind is preoccupied with certain things, and they are so intense that you fail to even take cognizance of what you are seeing. You are seeing them, but you are not actually responding to them. You are like a zombie. You just see things, you are moving around, and your mind is uh, somewhere else. It is worried about something, it is anxious about something. So, naturally, you feel that the mind is not something which is connected, though it is connected to the brain. At sometimes it can act independently of the brain. This is a unique thing which we have to understand if we want to understand pratyahara, that the mind is an entity which can act independent of the brain. It is a witness. It may or may not choose to respond. The most tasty sweet in front of you, at sometimes it will tempt you to eat it, but for a man of control, he may feel that I should not eat it because his mind is overpowering. He is not just listening to his sense organs. Sense organs have told him repeatedly that this is a wonderful sweet, why don't you eat it? The memory is so strong that it repeatedly bombards you, and if it is kept in front of you, you feel like just taking it. But then something in the mind which is separate, which has to be separate, which tells no, you should not eat this. So we say better sense prevails, and we say we don't eat it because it is going to harm me. It's not good for me. So that is how pratyahara acts. It is a faculty of the mind where you say, where you have control over the things that you see and the way you respond to them. You may be seeing things just as an animal is doing, but we don't rush after it like an animal does. We say, wait, let us just see. Why am I tempted to eat that sweet? A thinking person who is conscious about his health perhaps will wait. So these things, pratyahara, is the control of the sensory input. I'm taking so much time to explain because it's very important to understand this concept of pratyahara before even we try to understand what concentration and meditation is. We cannot hope, we just complain that we can't meditate, we can't focus, we can't do this, we can't do that. These things are very difficult. It's not possible for me repeating the mantra, doing this, doing that. But why? Because there is something lacking in us. The faculty of pratyahara, if it is deficient, if we are not trained enough, then we cannot do dharana, concentration, or dhyana, meditation. So Swamiji says, there are these three things. I'm repeating again. The process, to understand the process, you have to understand the different stages of pratyahara. The first is the external instruments through which the sensory input comes. We see certain things, the brain registers it, and the mind tells it, a discriminative mind tells it how to react, when to react, and why to react. So this mind is something different from the brain. We are not like animals. We don't have a rudimentary mind which gives us instructions without thought. We call it foresight, or we call it discrimination, or viveka. The word used in Indian scriptures is viveka, to discriminate, to try to find out, to use our wisdom, our higher thinking, our higher mind, the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which we can use to discern or decide whether we should react, whether we should eat that sweet or not. We see it, our taste buds are also activated. But then we say, no, we should not be eating this. Now that is possible only through pratyahara. This is a simple example I am giving you. Pratyahara is something which we need every second of our life. Without pratyahara, we are not even good human beings, leave alone yogis. So that's why Swamiji gives so much importance to this. Now, when these different sense inputs come together, Swamiji says, and attach themselves to some external object, then we perceive. It's a very simple thing which every scientist or every biologist will tell you. What is perception? Three things have to be three things have to come together. First, the eyes must see. The signal should go to the brain. The brain center must be functioning, and mind should be able to make a decision to process what it sees. It should decide this is a sweet. Then it should decide whether it should eat it or not eat it. Then the mind will give the job to the buddhi, to our higher mind, and tell him to decide whether eating the sweet right now is good or bad. If it says it is good, you can go ahead. You can safely eat it. Your health will not be affected by this. Then you go ahead and you finish the action. So pratyahara, that pause which you do before taking a decision, is because of the development of the faculty known as pratyahara in you. So, though the processes take place very fast, every time we have to take a decision, we are using the pratyahara. Every time we practice self-control, why we have to practice self-control, that is a different issue. Some people may not agree. They may say, why should we practice self-control? If you feel, you just eat it and allow the doctors to do their job. That is one way of looking at things. Animals do that. They don't have, perhaps we do not know, but at least they don't have the sense. Sometimes the animals also have some sense. They don't eat certain things when they are sick. They know what to eat, what not to eat. So, this faculty of the human mind, of the human personality, of the human being, to process the incoming information and react according to our higher faculty, which is known as buddhi, is known as pratyahara. When the buddhi develops, then only this pratyahara becomes better and better. You get better and better control. Just as you use your intelligence to drive a car, you can be a good driver, you can be a very bad driver, but the training which you have, the wisdom which you use, the input is same for all the drivers, but some drivers react properly. For that, pratyahara, control of the car, is necessary. So also in our body, the jivatma see things just like any other person sees. We perceive the same world as other people see, but some people react intelligently, are a bit cautious, and some people react without thinking. So that is the difference in pratyahara. It is difficult to concentrate the mind and attach it to one organ only. You see, so many informations come, and we have not even trained the mind to allow the mind to attach to one organ. Simultaneously, many things are happening. That's why when we want to study, when we want to read something, some noise comes and disturbs us. Why is that? Because there is no pratyahara. We don't have control over our sense organs. The disturbing music outside your home, or maybe in your own home, does not allow the eye, which is reading something very useful and important, to process. It comes and bombards your ears, and your mind is drawn outside to that music. And you say, I can't concentrate. I can't even do dharana, the next step. How can you do dharana when the sense organs are bombarded? So there should be some mechanism which enables you to shut out certain impressions. That's what Swamiji says. The mind is a slave. It is a very difficult thing to tell the mind, to tell the sense organs, or tell the mind to take only those inputs which are useful. I am reading a book. I want to focus if I want to pass, but the sound is disturbing me. Now I am such a slave to that music, or slave to that sound, or to the taste, that I feel like going out and eating. Now and then I feel like eating. I can't concentrate. If I'm hungry, I cannot sit down and read. My eyes say you have to read, but my mouth says the organ, the tongue says no. You have. It's time for you to eat. Time for you to listen to some music. Time for you to switch on the TV. So these are all the defects in pratyahara which we experience, which every human being experiences in every moment of his life. And to the extent we can develop this pratyahara, to that extent we can become more spiritual. So that is the idea. So Swamiji says, now you understand how difficult it is to do dharana or concentrate the mind and attach to one organ only. We have not been trained to do that. We don't train the children that when you sit for studies or when you sit for meditation or when you sit for japa, you should not be disturbed by anything happening around you. That requires a skilled training. That's why one of the most important things we can teach to educate a child is to teach the child pratyahara. We try to do it by teaching meditation and concentration, but the poor child cannot do it. It cannot even concentrate, it cannot meditate because it has not been told how to do pratyahara. The mind is still a slave to the various inputs it gets from the external organs, and they come at a very rapid pace. The more you are exposed to social media and many things, the gadgets and all those things, the more difficult pratyahara will become. That is why now so many books have been written to assess the impact of this changing things, this fast changing virtual perceptions, to add to the actual normal perceptions. We, as it is, we have normal disturbances in the house, in our atmosphere outside. There are so many distractions. To add to that, we have now come up with so many virtual distractions. I don't blame technology for that. Virtual distractions can be used in a positive way also, just as we are using now this media to communicate. Though we are far apart, we cannot be at one place, but at the same time we are using this virtual, we can use this virtual development in technology for even concentration, for pratyahara, for all these things if we want. But the negative side also is true. We can be distracted. So all these distractions, Swamiji says, the mind is a slave to that. Pratyahara, what it does, lack of pratyahara, makes your mind a slave to the external world. Instead of controlling the external world, controlling our destiny, the external world controls our destiny. And we think it is fate. We blame everybody. We blame others because we cannot control ourselves, control our mind. So the mind is a slave to many things, thousand things, which have come upon us as a choice, our own choice, or inadvertently, or maybe because of somebody else's choice. Whatever it may be, those things are constantly giving us inputs, and we have to develop this faculty of what ahara to take, what things to take, what things to reject, and what things to block. Like we have virus blockers. We block certain viruses. We can even block somebody's phones. We can block certain numbers if we don't want disturbance. So this pratyahara is a kind of blocking system where you use it to block unnecessary inputs. You see, I'm trying to explain it in various ways just to make simple a very, very difficult concept which everybody has to practice, but very few people practice consciously. They do it. They do it when they are needed to do it sometimes, and sometimes if they are lucky enough, the child develops that pratyahara. But more or most probably, it is we are left, we leave our children, we leave our future to chance, and allow the external world to impact us, and when it is too late, when it is too damaging, we try to rectify it. So Swamiji gives a beautiful example. He says, tell our children, be good and be good, be do good, be good. And this is taught all over the world. Moral lessons, etiquette, and all those things. Many things have found a place in our educational system where we constantly tell our children, Swamiji says, to be good, to hear good, to do good. Now the child has a question, why should I do good? You tell him, don't steal. There is only a child, Swamiji says, born in any country in the world who has not been told by his teachers and parents, if they are good, of course, they who have tell them, do not steal, do not tell a lie. These things, obviously, everybody teaches the children. But Swamiji says, nobody ever tells the child how he can help doing them or not doing them. He says, pratyahara, without pratyahara, you can't. You may tell a child not to tell a lie, not to be tempted, not to do this, not to do that, because it is not good. You can't just go and grab somebody else's sweet. You tell the child, maybe because it is afraid of the teacher or the parents, it will not do it. But it has not been taught in a very scientific way, in a yogic way, to practice pratyahara. We never bother to tell that child, why should you not steal? And how not to steal. Suppose there is a sweet which is bad for you, which should not be eating at odd hours. You don't teach a child how to control yourself so that you don't feel like eating it. Rather, you scold it, or rather, you put pressure, or you take away the sweet from the child, which is not going to solve the problem. So, Swamiji says the whole world is bothered about teaching moral values to children, but they don't teach the children how not to do these things, these things which are bad for it. So how to use our discrimination power? Now that action which is become natural to us, the stealing, telling lies, and all the evil deeds which we want to control, they say that is because our mind is slave to these things. The child is perhaps too much tempted. It feels that it should take something which does not belong to him, which is stealing, though it knows stealing is bad. It has not been, the child has not been taught pratyahara, so it cannot resist the temptation of just picking it up. He says, if I can easily get it without buying it, if I can just pick up this item which does not belong to me, it's such an easy thing to satisfy my cravings. So unfortunately, the child has been told that stealing is bad. Maybe it is doing it with a very guilty feeling. But at the same time, it is doing it because it has not been taught how to prevent, not to steal. It has not been, the child has not been taught the technique of pratyahara. So you can understand how important it is. Lack of pratyahara enslaves the mind. And that is why Swamiji says, willingly or unwillingly, all actions, internal and external, it's not just external, sometimes it can be internal. The mischief can come from within. You are just sitting and then you want to, just without even seeing the object, yeah, you may be tempted to steal something or do something, or harm somebody, make fun and disturb that person. That is an internal temptation. It's not external. Nothing external has induced you. So Swamiji says all actions, internal and external, occur when mind joins itself to certain centers called the organs, the indriyas. Then only they start acting. The person who has a memory of a sweet, whenever he enters a vicinity of a sweetmeat shop, he feels tempted to go and buy something. He has not seen the shop, but he seeks that shop and he goes after it. So if you want to think badly, the child has a temptation to steal it from somebody wherever it can get these things. So that is why Swamiji says, willingly or unwillingly, it is drawn itself to join itself. The jiva is joined, is forced to join to these external sense organs, and then it does foolish actions. And that is why people do foolish deeds and feel miserable. That's what Swamiji says. But if the mind were under control, if you had practiced pratyahara, these people would not do it. If it had been taught pratyahara, the people would not do it. So you have to understand the process of how these actions have become automatic with us. Why do we habitually steal? Why do we habitually tell lies? Why do we habitually do things which we are not supposed to do, which our moral values tell us not to do, but we do it? Why do these things happen? In spite of our knowing fully well, one side of the mind or one portion of the mind is telling you don't do it, the other portion says go ahead. So that is because of lack of pratyahara. So now you get an idea of what pratyahara is, what it does. So this is how Swamiji says, if you know the mechanism, how the organs go in, how it connects to the brain center, how does the mind respond? If you have a complete knowledge of this, not only have a complete theoretical knowledge of this process, but also experience it and decide that when certain temptations comes, I will now watch like a witness and try to find out if these things are tempting me, if these are making me a slave, or I can control them. Now that is the challenge which a yogi decides to undertake when he practices pratyahara. He or she practices pratyahara. Pratyahara is essential to control the mechanism of our sense organs, not only the sense organs, but also the mind, which attaches itself to these sense organs and takes decisions. Without that, we can neither control our body, we cannot do asana, we cannot do control our breath, pranayama, we cannot even do dharana or concentration, nor can we do dhyana, which is a higher form of concentration or meditation. So for all these things, to evolve ourselves, a proper training in pratyahara, that's why I spent some time trying to discuss what this pratyahara is. And Swamiji says, is it clear so far? And do you think it is possible? He's asking the question. This seems to be a very simple process, but difficult to practice. So Swamiji says, is it possible? Yes, it is possible. He says for a yogi, everything is possible. So we'll come to the practice of pratyahara. And he says many people, though they do not study yoga, they stumble upon this pratyahara. Somehow they control their minds. Some motive power controls their minds. And they become great intellectual giants. Even you don't need to know yoga to become a genius. Some people habitually, they are not tempted by the things like ordinary children are. They focus more on their subject, their mathematics, and they become very good in their subject. And the other parents think, why, if that child can become intelligent, why does my child not become intelligent? We don't realize that the difference in pratyahara, whether the parents have taught him or he has taught himself by experience, or some motive force, Swamiji says, you can even stumble upon this pratyahara. You suddenly get a motive power to control yourself, to control your diet, to control this, to control that, to control our, to make full use of our time, to organize our life. There are some people who do it. They just want self-development. And they don't have to be told by their parents or told by their teachers or anybody. The children are themselves keen. They want to achieve something. They know that without pratyahara, without concentration, I can't do well in my exams. Even for intellectual attainment, they go after this. But that is a lower motive, but anyway, it's a good motive. And Swamiji says, consciously or unconsciously, you might stumble upon this pratyahara. But the most important fact is that without pratyahara, you are doomed. Everybody is doomed. No progress, either secular or spiritual, is possible without a decent control over our mind. To excel in anything, either through by chance or willingly or unwillingly, Swamiji says, in modern times or in ancient times, these techniques of pratyahara or something which precedes concentration in the training of our mind, in the training of our intellect, in the training of our entire personality. This focus, this concentration comes as a result of proper practice of pratyahara. So, we just discussed what this pratyahara. In the next class, we will try to see what Swamiji has to say about this. Yes, to how pratyahara can result in hypnosis, how hypnotists use pratyahara, this auto suggestion. There are many ways of controlling. Some are good ways recognized by yoga, and some are artificial ways which you stumble upon, which are not good techniques. Somehow they achieve control over their minds, but in a very, very unscientific way and in a harmful way. So these artificial methods, what are those? Some of them are hypnosis, asking somebody to hypnotize you, or you hypnotize yourself by autosuggestion. And all these techniques, though apparently it is effective in achieving your goal, they can be extremely harmful. There is a natural way of controlling the mind. It is the hard way, no doubt. You can't have shortcuts in that. But it is a more scientific and a precise way to use control of mind to control our own destiny, to control our own future, to control ourselves. If we use the yoga way of pratyahara, rather than stumble upon it or use ways which are not uh, recognized or not helpful, there are external ways also to bring about this control or pratyahara. But if it is unscientific, if it is not based on yoga, it can be harmful. So that's why we have to be careful how we practice this pratyahara before we go to dharana. So now I'll switch on to the grid view, and if there are some questions, I can take a few questions. Let us go a bit slowly because this is a very important topic, and I would like to discuss this pratyahara in great detail, because otherwise we will not be able to appreciate the importance of this pratyahara. We will tend to jump and try to do meditation and dharana even before mastering this process. So if you can, if you have some questions, you can just ask.
Maharaj, can I
Yes.
ask you
Yes.
a question, please?
Yes, please.
Are you going to explain to us as to how Pratyahara can be practiced
Yes,
in the
yes.
next
I have
class?
to give this background. Yes, I am.
So today
That
is just a
that will
background.
take at
Okay.
least 2 more classes, because what Swamiji has discussed, I did not want to combine many things in one class. First of all, this session I decided to focus on the need and importance of pratyahara, because unless the need, or we have a tendency to skip this step. So I will discuss, but maybe after this class or maybe after one more class. But we will be starting next time. We'll
That's fine.
continue from where we left. Okay?
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's okay. Otherwise, my question was, how does one go
Okay.
about doing it? Especially when you said we should teach a child.
Yes.
I don't know how to teach myself, then I can teach a child. But if you're going to take it, that's great. So I'll wait for
Yes.
your next
Yeah.
classes on this.
Teach in the sense it is a self. I mean, you have to teach oneself. One has to teach oneself.
Mm-hmm.
It's that is why Swamiji makes a distinction. We choose to do it in a easy way. That's why we go to the hypnotist. When we can't do it ourselves, the hypnotist tries to do. That's why hypnotism as a science developed. What he does is he's teaching him pratyahara and forcing the patient or the person who is subjected to hypnosis
Mm.
to practice concentration using the willpower of somebody else.
Mm.
So also our parents or maybe teachers, everybody around us, we are sort of hypnotizing these children in a mild way. Please don't take it seriously.
Yes.
Nobody
Yes.
intently or intently with intention
Intentionally.
intentionally does it. But in fact, we are hypnotizing our children. We have to dehypnotize them and allow
Yeah.
them to dehypnotize themselves. You see, that is so one thing which we will discuss in the next class,
Uh-huh.
that this pratyahara, if it is done by force, yeah. So that's why I
Yeah.
said we have to teach ourselves. The technique we can learn from
Mm.
Swamiji,
Mm.
but
Mm.
Swamiji would not expect somebody to do it for another.
Yeah.
We can't force others, or
Or we
even
should not. We
we
should
should
not.
not. We should not. We can. Of course, hypnotists do that,
Yes.
but we should not force it because then it will not be natural and it
Yeah.
will lead to harm, lead to great harm because you are not in control of your destiny. Somebody else is.
True.
Hmm? So
Yeah.
that's what is happening. When we say that we are influencing our children's decisions, the decisions of the people around us, we are actually hypnotizing them. If we hypnotize them in a proper way, I mean with good intention, then it is okay. But very
Mm.
often we do not know the technique and hypnotize that. That's why this dehypnotization,
Mm.
uh, which we have to do, is
Mm-hmm.
something which has to be done by self effort.
Yeah.
Even the sadhana which we do, the
Mm.
guru doesn't do it for you. He will do it. He'll tell you how to do it, and then you have to do it to get benefit. No guru will say that I will do. You just sit down,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll do everything for you. So he
Yeah.
can do it,
Yeah.
but that is not how teaching takes place.
Mm.
Unfortunately, this factor or this element has not gone into our educational philosophy. We want
True.
to do everything. We want to outsource everything to others,
Mm.
and because that is how what technology tells us to do. And in
Mm.
the process, we lose control over those things ourselves. We need some support, some prop to control things, even for ourselves, not for others, not to
Mm.
control others, but to control ourselves. So
Mm.
this dehypnotization is what is known as pratyahara. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We are so used to being spoon fed or spoon feeding our children. That's the thing.
Yes. Yes.
We don't
Yes.
allow their own faculties to grow that way.
Yes. Yes. But it requires a lot of patience. It's
Uh,
easier to make a child, force a child to follow your instructions rather than allow him to develop in his own way. And
yes.
just at the same time, watch. You can't just allow him to develop because somebody else will influence him.
Yeah.
That is the problem. You see, it is not that you should just give the full control to him. You have to teach him how to drive the car.
Mm.
You just can't say, you take this car and go. You do everything yourself. That is also dangerous. But at the
Yes.
same time, if you drive and ask him to just sit on your seat next to you,
Mm.
then
Mm.
he will be used to you driving and he just enjoying the ride.
Mm.
That should not happen. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other question? Anybody else? Yes. If you are not able to unmute yourself, you can raise your hand. I can't see everybody, but I can see quite a few who have kept their cameras on. Yes. So shall I take your leave if there are no more questions?
Thank you, Swamiji.
Okay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.